Okay, today we're looking at a YouTube commentary called Welcome to Crazy Town. It's a really intense piece that starts as a critique of liberal protesters in Hollywood and then pivots hard into a theological argument about the end time. Let's just jump right in.
The most immediate thing, the first thing that really hits you is the tonal consistency, or rather the lack of it. This piece suffers from a really jarring disconnect between the language of, internet ridicule and the very solemn theological message he's trying to deliver.
Right, and that's a big hurdle. But let me push back on that for a sec, just to play devil's advocate. Isn't that kind of the point of this whole genre?
How so?
Well, these channels, they thrive on being abrasive, right? On shock value? If he smooths out all the edges, does he risk losing that Crazy Town brand he's obviously trying to build?
That is the central tension, isn't it? It's the algorithm versus the actual goal. And look, if his goal was just to entertain his base, people who already agree with him, the tone would be fine, I guess.
But it's not.
It's not. He's very clear. He says his goal is, and I'm quoting here, to show you the reality of a true living God. He literally ends with an altar call.
Okay.
So the problem isn't the aggression itself, it's the type of aggression. He's calling people smooth-brained, he's talking about Looneyville, and then he's pleading for their eternal souls. You can't be an internet troll for 10 minutes and then expect to be seen as a pastor for the last 5.
It's a complete character break. It's like a comedian suddenly trying to give you serious financial advice. You don't trust the source anymore.
It creates a huge cognitive dissonance. And let's get specific. The language he uses for the protesters, he calls them, quote, sorry cocksucking sons of bitches.
Yeah, that's, strong.
It's very strong. And then later he says, I pray to God you are Lot walking your way out of Sodom. When a viewer hears that first phrase, their brain just files them away under hostile, vulgar, maybe unserious.
And it's hard to get out of that box.
It's almost impossible. Your brain can't switch that category to spiritual guide fast enough to actually hear the message.
So the insults are basically a firewall against the very people he says he wants to save.
But how does he fix that without becoming, boring? He's trying to be a fisher of men, but the bait is scaring the fish away. The suggestion here is to harmonize those two voices, the cultural commentator and the pastor. And the way you do that is by framing the criticism through sorrow instead of mockery.
Sorrow?
Yes. He needs to sound less like a heckler laughing at the people in Crazy Town and more like a watchman on the wall who's heartbroken, warning them to get out. You can still have righteous anger, you can still be sharp, but you can't be petty.
Okay, let's make that concrete. What about the smooth-brained comment? That's a very online kind of insult. How do you translate that into Watchman language?
Right now, the line is something like, hope that's not a difficult one for some of these smooth-brained individuals to catch on to. That's just an attack.
Yeah, it's just pure mockery.
A better way to phrase that to get the same point across will be something like, this is a simple truth that seems to be completely blinded by the cultural confusion we're seeing. See the difference?
You're diagnosing a condition, not just throwing an insult. One is about their state, the other is about their intelligence.
Exactly. It shifts from mocking them to mourning for them.
And the profanity? That line is the heaviest lift here.
It has to go. It just has to. It completely undermines the entire idea of holiness that he preaches later. But you don't just delete it, you replace it with something that hits just as hard, but actually fits his theology.
So instead of a schoolyard insult,
describe the behavior. Call it feral, or spiritually chaotic, or lost.
okay, feral still has that bite, it has the aggression he wants, but it serves the bigger narrative of a world falling into chaos, whereas the other thing just sounds like he's angry.
It elevates the entire critique. There's another bit. With the woman who's afraid of white men, right now he just mocks her for being crazy.
Right, it's just a punchline.
It's dismissive. But what if he used that as a chance to pivot to a spiritual diagnosis? Instead of just laughing, he could say, this fear isn't just political. This is the spirit of fear the scripture talks about, and it's replacing the spirit of power and a sound mind.
Wow. Yeah. That actually makes the argument much more powerful. It's not this person is silly, it's this person is a victim of a spiritual attack. It raises the stake.
And it serves his ending. If your subjects are captives, not idiots, then the audience is much more primed to want to see them saved by the end.
Okay, so fixing the tone is number one. But that leads right into the next problem. Because when he's in that roast mode, he gets, let's say, a little loose with the fact, which I think brings us to critique number 2.
Argumentative precision and the absolutist trap. This is where the whole thing becomes incredibly vulnerable to any kind of skepticism. He uses these huge, sweeping generalizations, often based on just his own anecdotal evidence, and it it weakens the logic of his arguments.
I noticed that with the ICE protest section. He says something like, I don't see thousands of Hispanics protesting, to make the point that it's only white liberals who care.
And what's your immediate reaction as a listener?
My immediate thought is, well, I'm pretty sure I saw a news clip of Hispanic protesters yesterday, so you're just wrong. And boom, your credibility is shot.
That is the absolute danger of anecdotal certainty. If your viewer can think of a single exception, the whole foundation of your claim just crumbles. And he does the same thing with theology, especially the yoga part.
Oh yeah, that was a big one.
He says yoga is, quote, literally submission to demons and of the devil, period. No nuance. And that forces the listener into this all-or-nothing position. You have to accept every single premise, the politics, the conspiracy, the theology, or you have to reject him entirely.
But isn't there some power in that? In just drawing a hard line in the sand? You know, choose a side? If he starts adding a bunch of, well, maybes and on the other hands, doesn't he sound weak?
There's a huge difference between having conviction and using a flawed argument to support it. You can be firm in your belief without being logically sloppy.
The suggestion here is for him to use what's called a steelmanning technique.
Steelmanning. Okay, explain that.
It's where you acknowledge the strongest, most charitable version of the other side's argument before you take it apart. It actually shows you have more command of the topic, not less.
So how would that work with the race argument?
Instead of, I don't see any Hispanics, which is just factually weak, he could say something like, now, while you will certainly see diversity in these crowds, the leadership and the loudest voices often come from a white liberal demographic that, frankly, is completely disconnected from the immigrant experience I actually lived.
Ah, that's so much stronger. It validates what the viewer might already be thinking. I've seen diverse crowds, so they stay with you. But then you pivot to your deeper point about the ideology behind it.
It makes the argument almost bulletproof against that simple, I saw one guy, counter-argument. Now let's apply that to yoga. That is a massive stumbling block for most people.
I can just imagine people rolling their eyes. I'm just doing stretches for my back. I'm not summoning anything.
Of course. And he needs to anticipate that reaction. Instead of just declaring it is of the devil, period, he should steelman the common view. He could say, look, you might see it as just stretching, and on a purely physical level, it is. But we have to ask the deeper question. Can you really separate a spiritual practice from its origins in worship? I would argue that you can.
I like that. That invites the listener to think with him. It says, I understand your perspective, but have you considered this deeper layer?
It changes the whole dynamic. It's not a lecture, it's a persuasive argument. It respects the audience. And honestly, it makes his theological point land with more weight. It's not just an accusation, it's a lingering question. What are you actually participating in?
So we fix the tone, we tighten the logic, but there's still this structural problem. I mean, when I watched it, it felt like I literally changed the channel halfway through the video.
And that's the third critique, structural flow and the pulpit pivot. The structure feels like two completely different videos. One is a political reaction video, the other is a sermon, and they've just been stitched together. It creates a really bad pacing issue.
It really is two halves. You have the high-energy, clip-driven stuff at the beginning. Natalie Portman, that Ohio AG candidate, all that. And then it just stopped. And suddenly we're in this long monologue about Noah and the days of Lot.
The core weakness is that the so what of the piece, the whole point, is completely backloaded. If you're there for the political roast, you're probably going to click away before the sermon even starts.
And if you're there for the sermon, you might not have the patience to sit through 10 minutes of what feels like random political jokes.
Exactly. It's a pacing nightmare. He's asking the audience to just trust him for 10 minutes before he reveals why any of it matters. So the suggestion isn't to cut the reaction clips, that's his hook.
Right.
The suggestion is to weave that theological lens through the entire reaction segment. The clips shouldn't just be targets for ridicule. They should be presented as evidence for the biblical prophecies he's going to talk about later.
So foreshadowing based. Use the clips to prove the sermon that's coming, instead of just laughing.
The days of Noah idea shouldn't suddenly appear at minute 12. It should be the framework for minute 1.
Let's use an example. The Ohio AG candidate. The guy is just screaming. He's threatening the president. Right now, the video just kind of mocks his rate. How do you bridge that?
You explicitly link it to the sermon. As he's playing that clip, he should say something like, notice the rage in this man's voice, the total lack of restraint. Keep that in mind because in a few minutes, we're going to look at what Scripture says about the love of many waxing cold and lawlessness.
Okay, that creates a thread. It's a promise to the viewer. Stick around, this is going somewhere important. It's not a random clip anymore, it's Exhibit A in the case he's building.
It builds suspense. Another thing is his transitions. He says things like, now let's go ahead and continue. Most of these videos I haven't watched. It just sounds lazy. It breaks the immersion.
It sounds like a streamer just killing time.
Right. Instead, every transition needs to be thematic. We've seen the anger. Now let's look at the delusion. Every single move should push the main thesis forward.
What about the Natalie Portman section? He spends a lot of time there, joking about her being in an ivory tower and Adam Sandler's shorts. It's funny, but does it actually serve the sermon at the end?
As it is right now, not really. It's mostly filler. But it could. The way to strengthen it is to connect her clear disconnect from reality to the idea of spiritual blindness. Don't just frame Hollywood as Cuckooville, frame it as the modern Babylon.
Oh, that's good.
Because then it's a direct setup for his plea later to come out of her. It becomes a perfect illustration.
And that ties all the way back to the first critique about tone. If you call Hollywood Babylon, the critique suddenly has weight. It's not just petty gossip. It feels like spiritual warfare, which is what he's trying to talk about anyway.
It makes the whole video one single cohesive argument instead of a variety show.
I think that's the key. All the raw materials are here. He has a really unique and powerful voice. This immigrant perspective on American politics is not something you hear every day, but his own voice is kind of fighting against his message right now.
The passion is absolutely there, and that perspective is compelling, but the execution just needs to be refined so he can actually achieve his stated goal. Right now, the roast is getting in the way of the redemption.
So let's wrap this up. If the writer is sitting down to rewrite this tomorrow, what are the 3 big takeaways?
First, align the tone. You have to choose. Are you a heckler or a watchman? You can't be both. Swap out the schoolyard insults for more potent spiritual descriptors like feral or chaotic.
Second, nuance the logic. Avoid those absolutist traps. Use steelmanning to make your arguments about politics, about yoga, about whatever, more defensible. Show the audience you understand their view before you dismantle it.
And third, integrate the theology early. Stop thinking of it as 2 videos. Weave your sermon through the entire piece. Use the reaction clips as evidence that builds toward your theological conclusion, so the pivot at the end feels earned and inevitable.
The potential here is really high. We don't want him to lose that raw energy, but we want that energy to be effective.
Exactly. We want the arrow to actually hit the target. Right now, it's just flying a little wild.
Well, we would love to see where this goes. We invite you to submit your work again once you've tried to bridge that gap between roasting and redeeming. Thanks for trusting us with your script.
Keep at it.